Useless to worry until we find ourselves blocked. If it happens, then we must simply find a way around it. It may slow us down, but we will never get there if all we do is sit still and worry.
Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. I'm Ramia Amuddin. Jacob Szymanski is also here, along with Nisreen Abdel Majid, our technical producer. Oh, I like that. Kind of like every syllable counts in Nisreen's name. Anyway, we started with a quote of the day. And Jacob, you picked this one. I really like it. Very philosophical. Who's it by? Where's it from?
This is by Robin Hobb. I just finished reading her first trilogy of books, the Farseer trilogy. It was very good, but I like this quote specifically because it has to do with something I really take to heart, and that's the danger of indecisiveness. It's often so much worse to not make a decision than to take something that might seem suboptimal. And I thought this was just a very eloquent way of putting it. And it's a big theme in the books too.
Especially that standstill, right? Of like, you can't go here, you can't go there, you're stuck at the fork in the road. And mentally exhausting.
I forgot in what book it was, but there was another analogy along these lines where there was a general marching down a road with his army, and they come to a fork in the road that wasn't marked on a map. And very quickly, he says, "We're going left." And then later on that night, one of his soldiers walks up and says, "How did you know to go left?" He said, I didn't, but we weren't getting anywhere if we didn't choose one.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter. You just have to make a choice, right?
Yep. I love it. All right. Good quote to start things off with. We've got a full episode on a very specific theme here. A huge part of living the audiobook worm life is taking recommendations, seeking out your next reads. All of this comes from recommendations, whether it be from coworkers or close friends or websites or TikTok or Book Talk or wherever you're getting your recommendations. But not all recommendations are made equal, says Jacob Szymanski. So we want to talk about how we take our recommendations, what makes us take our recommendations seriously, and, you know, if you feel like being a better person, how do you work on your own recommendation skills? Very good. So the art of the book recommendation. And for the best conversation ever around this, let's bring on Aamer Khan, our audiobook curator, as we now call him. Yep. And later on, we're going to talk about, we've expanded the question into the book club and gotten responses from people as well. Some very entertaining responses, I will say. So we'll bring that on. But first half of the show first. Hello, welcome back, Aamer.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be back.
By the way, Aamer has put his foot down about rapid fire review, so that's coming up later on in the show as well. It's just like, no, we're not starting 2024 in any other way. We'll do that. But Jacob, you kind of wanted to start off this recommendation conversation on a very strict and professional formal notes. How do you want to do this?
Let's kick things off with a simple do's and don'ts list for recommendations. Because, like you mentioned in the intro, not all recommendations are equal. Some people just suck at them. Let's be real. Listen, you can't be good at everything, but listen, some people just suck at recommendations. Like I could name names, but I won't.
Oh my
That's
God,
harsh.
super attacked. Okay.
And listen. I'm not a professional. I didn't go to recommendology school. I'm just opinionated.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I really appreciate a well-structured recommendation. And it's when you recommend a book to somebody and then they read it, it's a really connecting moment between you and that other person.
True.
Right? Like it's something good friends do. Right? And the other way around too, if you read a book that somebody else recommends to you, like the first thing you're going to do is go talk to them about it, right?
Okay, fine. I will continue to read the book that you recommended. You already read the one I recommended. I think
our
sorry.
Friendship was on the line. This is why I'm bringing this up.
Sorry. I feel like this whole episode, I don't want to sit here and not have apologized. So let's start on a good note.
Yeah, I think recommendations should be taken quite seriously, and I'm always hesitate when somebody I don't know all that well just asks me for a book recommendation, and I'm like, okay, pause and let me ask what they actually like first, because as somebody who's an audiobook, or might read a lot of different types of books, and it's one of those things, like you said, it can be important. It's not something you just want to do right off the cuff.
Yeah, ruins
Yeah,
friendships.
and that has a lot to do with the very first do on the list, or first
Mm-hmm.
do of book recommendations is personalize your book recommendations. So the basic form of that is if you know somebody likes science fiction, then recommend them science fiction, but that's really basic. Say you don't know what genres they listen or read typically.
Hmm.
What are their interests? Are they into sports? Do they go to the gym a lot? Like, are they academics? If that's the case, then they might be more into nonfiction or like self-help. Although the question poses itself though: is it passive aggressive to recommend someone a self-help book?
That's what I mean. But you could have that relationship, right, where you guys are talking mental health all the time and things. Like we have friends like that. Where
Yeah,
you can
actually,
really get into it.
I know somebody who reads exclusively self-help.
Whoa.
So that was a
Gotta get
surprise
them
to
on the
me. I'm
show.
like, whoa, that's different. But so I mean, a book recommendation for a self-help book wouldn't be taken poorly in that light. I mean, they'd probably welcome that.
Yeah. So I guess the opposite of this do is don't just recommend something that you love and assume somebody else will love it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Mm-hmm.
you, just because you liked it doesn't mean somebody else liked it, and that applies for not just books, but like anything really, music or TV shows.
Yeah.
Like you have to know the person you're recommending to.
Cater. Okay. What's a don't?
Don't just summarize the book, right? Because while a
'Cause
book
there's
summary is
spoiler alerts?
helpful, yeah, well, like a book summary is helpful, but it just gives you an idea of what to expect. Like a summary is too detached from whether or not you actually liked it. Like I can summarize to you One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus, but that wouldn't tell you the fact that I thought it was
No.
a terrible book. You know,
You know
like
what does the opposite for me? Now I'm like, I don't want to read it. Genuinely, if somebody talks too much about a book and goes through all the timelines and characters and plots and relationships, I'm like, okay, cool. But now I'm genuinely not going to read it anymore.
Yeah, I think I had that experience with Harry Potter because I just heard so much about
Too
it. I'm
much.
like, why am I
Yeah.
going to pick up this book?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
You know too much
know
about
friends who
it.
do this. Yeah. And sometimes I want to stop people while they're talking about a book because I'm like, wait. But I want to like actually get into this and you're telling me way too much.
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with spoilers, right? I mean, for me, when I had more sight, I always took sort of the back of the book as the or the synopsis as a guide to tell people about.
Right.
But as you know, a lot of the synopses I've read, I prefer just to go into a book totally cold and see what's going on in the book rather than reading the synopsis. So
Yeah.
even for book club recommendations, when I send out voting for the book club, I tend to, if I don't like the synopsis, I'll write my own and be very careful not to give any
Right.
spoilers
Good
away, and
point.
just enough that you get an idea of what the book might be about, but not necessarily plot by plot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Some of the back of the books are too much.
Let's not forget that a summary is meant to sell you the book, right? It's not a personalized recommendation. It's literally
It's supposed
like
to be a tease.
yeah, it's a blurb from the publisher to sell you the book, like a tease. It's basically a trailer.
Yeah, but now these days, and I can say this for trailers as well, it feels like way too much info. Way too much going on in the synopsis. And genuinely a lot of synopses that I read these days, I'm like, okay, I don't want to pick up the book anymore.
Like you ruined it.
Yeah, you've ruined it, for real. And if this is the way that the book is written, I'm good.
Now, I'm not saying don't give an idea what the book is like. I would say give us a premise instead of a summary.
Yeah.
So, like, if you were to take
Yeah.
Harry Potter, instead of saying, "Oh, Harry Potter is about like this boy wizard, and he has these friends called Ron and Hermione, and he goes to the school, and there's this Dark Lord Voldemort, and he has to go and throw a
Yeah.
wizarding cup, and he does Quidditch." Like, no.
Yeah, no.
He's a boy wizard, and he goes to a school of witchcraft and wizardry.
Yeah. And
Boom.
he's learning about being a wizard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
And I
it.
think
That's
to
all you
your
need to know.
point, Jacob, I mean, you mentioned sort of the selling aspect of it, and I think from reading enough of these synopses now, I can pretty much guarantee that the authors aren't writing those.
They're
Uh,
not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
true.
It's gone way too long. And that's another don't, yeah? Keep it
Yeah.
short. Don't go
This one's
forever.
really simple. Like our attention spans just aren't what they used to be. And I'd say that when we're talking about books and recommending books to our friends, what really gets you sometimes is just one very specific detail of that recommendation. Like, Ramya, I think back to a couple episodes ago, we were talking about My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. And I mentioned that that book, what it does better than I've ever seen in any other book, is that it portrays the feminist dilemma of commodifying your body for profit. And you heard that and you went, I'm sold. That's all you needed. You did one sentence.
Yeah, exactly. There's something about, and not everyone's good at this, right? It's just like that elevator pitch we hear about and how to sell yourself and all these things. We're not all great at it, but I feel like we could really understand why it works. Why these like very, I want to say tease again, but yeah, these one-liners that don't do much in terms of depth and content, but just leave you with a teaser going, okay, yeah, that's.
Yeah,
I'm
I
down.
still recall Ramya's recommendation to me about The Starless Sea by Ed Morgenstern.
What did I
That's-
say?
It was literally one line. It's really well written, and I won't tell you anything else.
That's
I
it.
said, okay. Let me.
That's it. That's because
And
I
that
couldn't
sold
tell
it?
you anything else. Genuinely, it was the most confusing thing to try to tell someone about. But he read it. And see, that's the other thing. Like, I kind of know what would make Aamer pick up a book. Less information, the better.
And that goes into personalizing it, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Way to keep it enigmatic. Jeez.
I
It's
know,
really
I
well
know.
written, and I don't know how else to describe it.
But I didn't say I didn't know how else. I said I will not tell you anything else. Now he's like, I gotta know. Okay. Don't caveat your recommendations with negatives. Tell us more.
Every book is going to have its weak points, but if in your recommendation you're including negatives for some reason, like maybe this is a personal thing, but you're going to have confirmation bias, or you're going to go into it expecting those negatives, even though they might not necessarily bother
think
you. Typically, if you
Sometimes.
weren't yeah, what do you think?
I think sometimes it's needed, Jacob. I mean, I'm just thinking back to The Starless Sea. I mean, I would probably tell people, don't try to, figure out the ending, try to enjoy the writing as much as possible, because it is a complex book to read and understand, and a lot of it you're not really meant to understand it. So, I mean, if the person is, somebody who really likes mysteries and is one of these folks that really tries to solve it before the author sort of gives them the ending, I mean, they will go absolutely bonkers with The Starless Sea.
But see, if you say that, I want to challenge a little. If you say that to someone, like, don't try to figure out the ending, blah, blah, blah. If you try to say that to someone who said confirmation bias already? Like, if you say that to someone who really does expect an ending or expect things to wrap up cleanly at the end of a book, would that not toss them the other way and say, never mind, I'm not going to pick it up in?
I think it's about balancing too, right? I mean, if you know that this person really enjoys great writing, like I do.
So it's back to the catering.
It's back to the catering, because I'm also somebody who really enjoys a good ending, and I truly enjoyed that book. And
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to
right?
jump in here and tell you that if somebody told me that the ending doesn't end properly, I will not pick up that book. Because I'm one of those
Fair.
people.
Hardcore.
Yeah, I'm one of those
Yeah.
people that expect clean endings. And I know that's not realistic, and there's so many out there that end horribly.
No, but it's true.
I get so
Yeah.
angry and frustrated when I finish a book that doesn't have a clean ending. And
Trust me, this
Yeah.
book will not be your
Yeah.
book.
No, but at the same time, I think the ending for that book matches the book itself, right? I think there's a difference between a book
Yeah, but
having
it's so
a
meandering.
proper, clean ending and then sort of trailing off, and then the other kinds of endings, which are just like, it just didn't match the rest of the book. Like 3/4 of the way, you're sort of reading,
Yeah.
and then you get to the ending, you're like, you feel cheated, right?
This was such a meandering book. Like, there's no
Cheated,
direction
exactly.
per se at all. Every
I'm
page
not
is
picking up that book.
"What?"
I
Yeah.
will say, I'm sure there's Cole's notes for it where the ending does make sense, and it's one of those books
Somebody gotta
where
explain that for me.
I know something happened, but I just couldn't invest the time to
Right.
pick up my
Figure out
magnifying
exactly.
glass and do it.
In my opinion, like it or not, the expectations you go into a book with are going to affect your
Yep.
experience of that book.
Yep.
There's no two ways
Absolutely.
about it.
It's like if you read a book and then the TV adaptation came out, and somebody who's read the book also then watched the TV adaptation and is going to tell you their opinion on it before you go in. You're going to go in with the preconceived notions of now whether or not you think you'll like it based on this other person's opinion. I just feel like it does, it gives you too much insight if you start talking about the negatives.
Sometimes you go into a book, you read it, and you're pleasantly surprised because you didn't go into it with a lot of expectations. Whereas if you went into it knowing that it won a bunch of awards, you would be so much more critical.
Yeah. Oh, we're swayed very easily.
And trailers make that impact too, right? I mean, on movies, I mean, if you see a trailer and you're expecting one thing and then you go into the movie and it's completely something else, you're like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same.
And if you were excited about a movie, but then you saw the trailer and it didn't look good, you're like, oh no. Right. So,
definitely.
Give us examples, Jacob, though, of like caveats of like negative things that you could say to kind of ruin a recommendation.
Hey, buddy, you should read this book, but note that the first half is really slow, but it really picks up halfway.
Oh, no. No, it's like people saying the first season of this show is terrible, but when you get to season 2, I'm like, I'm out.
Then you start to skim through the book.
So is there...
Yeah, when's the good part?
You already hate it. You don't
so
even know
is there
why.
a difference between a cautious warning and a caveat?
No, this is a cautious warning. Don't do it. Like the one you just did, Jacob. That sounds like a cautious warning, but I don't like it. I don't want to hear that.
No, I don't like it either. I would be mad if somebody told me that. I think if the book is good as a whole, like if you were to finish this book and think of it like positively, then don't tell me that. It's not worth it. You're literally ruining the experience.
The recommendation is not going to be taken, in my opinion.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely
What's
not.
another
Me
one?
neither. Here's another one. The writing is average, but the characters are brilliant.
The writing is average. I'm out.
No, the writing is like the most important part for me.
Yo, get out of here. Get out of here. No, I'm not reading this book. What is average anyways? What's your average versus my average? You see, I'm going to spend so much more time thinking about this than actually picking up the book.
Well, I would ask the question, is Harry Potter average writing?
Yes.
Hey.
It's average writing.
Whoa.
But the characters are good. Like, I actually said it's a perfect
average
description of Harry
writing.
Potter.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
relax.
average writing. Come on.
We'll move on. What's another example?
Okay.
Or do, I guess.
This is a challenging read, but stick with it. What do you think of that?
Okay, that's probably the best one out of the 3. Because that feels more like a challenge than a negative.
I feel like all of these could apply to the Starless Sea at this point.
Oh, yeah. I like this one. I'd say out of the 3 examples you role played, the challenging read but stick with it is kind of like, oh, maybe you know that I'd kind of struggle with it, but I would leave really having enjoyed the experience or taken something out of the experience.
Okay. So let's reframe this don't. I'm going to reframe it as be careful with the negatives you include in your recommendation because they can affect the experience. Again, this is one of those situations we have to personalize the recommendation. So, for example, like Ramya, if I know you care a lot about the quality of the writing, like maybe don't include something like the writing is mid, but everything else is good. Like I'm not going to include that. Whereas if I know somebody else doesn't care that much about the writing, then that's okay to include.
Or thinks Harry Potter's just average writing. What? Okay, yeah. Then you can say that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, be specific. If you just tell someone, oh my God, this book is so good, you should read it. Okay, why? Be specific. Like, you can be very specific. You can say, like, this specific character is the most interesting character I've ever come across in a book ever.
Yo, you better mean it, though. Because there's people who say stuff like that, but it's such an... Again, you have to know sometimes that the way that you frame things come across so brilliant, and then someone will read the book and say, oh my God, that was not the best character ever, and now I'm never going to take a recommendation from you. I'm a cynic, guys. If you're telling me this is the best character ever, it better freaking be.
Yeah, I think there's that matchup that Jacob was alluding to at the beginning. You know, you can't always recommend something to everyone, right?
True.
And it's, I've had the experience where I really enjoyed The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by Schwab, which a lot of us do. And I've had the experience of recommending it to somebody and them being like, nah,
Yeah.
it was just okay.
But you did have
And I was
several
like, I
of
can't
us who were on that boat with
I
you.
can't recommend a book to you ever again now.
Mhm.
That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's true. Because we really hyped that book up. And it happened with Jacob and I. I did the same thing. I was like, Invisible Life, you got to read it. And then I tried to caveat it because I was like, I don't know if you'll enjoy this about the book that I really enjoyed. And then he was like, meh. And I was like, no. But it happens, I guess.
See, there's a reason I put personalize your recommendations as
First,
the very first
yeah.
to do, because it is honestly the most important
Yeah.
thing. Moving on, don't include names of places and characters. So don't get tied up in useless details that affect absolutely nothing about the recommendation. Like, who cares if the main character is called Jennifer and she goes to a school called like Greenwood High? It doesn't matter. Literally just give us the premise.
Yeah.
So don't get caught up on useless details. Another important thing is include external information about the book too, especially if the book has an interesting backstory, like things like, oh, it's based on a true story, or like it was written by this person who's lived a crazy life. Or for example, like in Frankenstein, it was written in 1816 during the year that was known as the year without a summer, where it was so cloudy that it was just, there were so many particulates from a volcano eruption in the Philippines that it clouded the entire earth with ash and caused like the global temperature to be really, really low, and it made it so there was really gloomy all year long, and inspired Mary Shelley and her friends to have a horror writing competition, and that's where she wrote Frankenstein.
Okay. My follow-up around this is this really part of the recommendation, though? Or is this more of a
Yes,
follow-up
it is part of the
conversation
recommendation.
after you've read
No,
the
no,
book?
no. I'd say it is part of the recommendation for sure. It just puts more cultural context around the book. It's like saying Lord of the Rings was George R. Tolkien's magnum opus. Like, he worked on this his entire life from like 1910 to 1954 at the time that it was
Does it really make
published.
the
And
book better?
I think so.
Does
I think
it?
so. Well, it doesn't make the book better,
That's
but
what
it
I'm
makes it
saying.
more interesting.
Okay, yes, the process is interesting. It's like I can go on and on and on and on and on about Stephen King and his process. And, when he wrote this book, he was blah, blah, blah. But if you're not a fan already, or if you don't have some insight into the world, aka, you liked the book or have previously read books by this author, does it really matter if this information is shared with you as part of the recommendation?
I will loop you back to the keep it short part of this do's and don'ts list. Listen, you can mention those details, but be brief about
Okay.
it.
All right. It is
Right?
interesting.
Like, I think it's relevant.
It is interesting.
If
That's the part
if
I'm
I told you The
questioning,
Catcher in the
relevance.
Rye was apparently idolized by the guy who shot John Lennon,
Okay, yeah, that's a
like,
good example.
doesn't that make you slightly
Yeah,
more
yeah.
curious?
Wait a minute.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go through our own recommendations for each other. So basically, we're putting our own selves to the test of the art of the recommendation after the do's and don'ts and challenges of the first bit of how to do it right. Okay, you've given us the guidelines and the rule book, and now it's time for us to recommend. Who do you think we should go first?
Okay, since I made this do's and don'ts list, I'm kind of worried that I'm gonna do a terrible job.
Yeah.
It's like a professor failing his own
Right.
test. All right, Aamer, I have a book for you.
I am ready.
All right. The Life of Pi by Jan Martel. I think you would like this one specifically because it does deal with a lot of themes of like religion and philosophy, and it leaves a lot of people having conflicting emotions after the ending. It's very much up to your interpretation.
I love this one.
Yeah, you've read it, Niz?
Oh, you got a side recommendation.
Yep. I read it a while back, but I loved it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I read it through school, actually. The main character practices Christianity. He's a Christian, a Muslim, and a Hindu, all at the same time.
Whoa.
And it's a story about him surviving on a lifeboat with a tiger and the spiritual journey that goes through that. And again,
No,
it's all about the
crazy.
ending.
Aamer, you'd love it.
Yeah, Aamer, you would love it.
Okay, another do for the guidelines is get someone else to vouch for the recommendation.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it always helps to have people in your camp that cheer you on. Yeah. it always makes me feel better when I mention a title and everybody's like, yes, that's a great book, and I'm like, all right,
Right.
let's see, I've done my job.
Some validation always helps when you have your friends to back you up. Okay, Aamer,
Absolutely.
before you tell me if you would want to read this book after that recommendation, Niz and Ramya, give me a letter grade.
Yo, that was I'd say a pretty solid recommendation job. I give you an A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, A for me.
Because now I want to read the book as well.
All right, cool. I feel like I could have done better, but that's because I really personally like this book, and I feel like I just can't do it justice. But okay, moving on. Rams, who do you want to recommend to?
Oh my God. I will recommend to Nasreen. Okay, caveat. I have talked about all of these books already on the show, so bear with me. But Nasreen,
Yes.
the book that I'm recommending to you is Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. And
Yeah.
I think you would love this book because of your love for mystery, suspense, thriller. This thing it takes you on a journey, right? And you're following one major character. She's got lots of flaws, by the way. She barely does anything right. She's an absolute mess. And you will have a lot of fun critiquing her throughout the book. And then there are all these other female characters and their husbands and their wives and just drama overall. It's practically a reality show wrapped up into a thriller. And the way that it takes place, because it's just kind of gloomy and mysterious the entire time, I think you'll like the setting of it as well.
I'm gonna give you an A plus.
A plus.
Yeah.
A plus.
Really?
That was amazing.
Guys!
I want to read that.
You
Shut
sold
up.
it so perfectly, and you knew my interests. You knew what types of books I'm into, and I think that the way you brought it up is just flawless. Flawless.
Hey, I didn't even get to the narration, which is also so good. You're gonna love it as an audiobook. Pick it up, girl.
I can't wait. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you.
Aamer,
All right.
you want to try?
There's no pressure now.
An A and an A plus. There you
Yeah,
go.
you got this. You
See if
got
you
it.
can bring down the average
Wow.
or maintain it. We'll see.
I believe in you, Amer. Come on.
I'm going to recommend to Ramya. And this one is an easy choice for me because I'm reading it right now. I haven't even finished it, and I cannot put it down. It's Vox by Christina Delcher. It is audio described by our favorite narrator, Julia Whalen. So
Hell
I
yeah.
know she's going to read it already. But the premise is super interesting as well in terms of it's sort of a Margaret Atwood esque post-apocalyptic thing in the United States where women are braceleted with a counter for the number of words they can speak. And they are only allowed 100 words per day.
Shut
and if
up.
they go over that, they get shocked. So it's a world where ultra religion has sort of taken over the United States, and the author does a fantastic job of laying out that world and how it came to be. And the scariest part is that it looks very possible.
Oh my. Oh, I am definitely going to read this. You know my love for this Black Mirror type stuff. Like, what do you call this? Dystopian, but so realistic. Like it's not far-fetched enough that it's sci-fi. It's just so close to the realities we live in. And this doesn't sound like that, but you're saying that there's going to be the breakdown of how we went from this to that.
Absolutely.
Which is why I loved C on Apple TV Plus. Oh, that was a good recommendation, man.
That was really good.
That was great. And you already
letter
picked
grade?
things. Oh, letter grade. Okay. I'd say an A.
Yeah, I'm
Because
giving it
he
an
knew
A
my
as well.
interests. He knows what I like in TV and movies and just in general genre.
Yeah, the bonus being narrator.
Yep. That was the first fact too. Good. All right, Jacob, back to you.
Rams, I have one for you.
Okay.
Okay, this one is by journalist, author, and podcaster Malcolm Gladwell, Talking to Strangers, What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know. This is an exploration of human psychology, which I know you're really into. It's obviously nonfiction, and the premise is basically that we are terrible at understanding strangers, and that miscommunication, misinterpretations, and misunderstandings are what lead to tragedy. And basically what it teaches you is that we need to approach interactions with strangers with humility and understand that strangers are super hard to understand.
A plus. A plus.
You're in?
Yeah, I'm in. I'm gonna pick it up tonight. It's so good. Okay. Nobody's recommended to Jacob yet.
I think we're all
'Cause I'm
afraid.
We're
enigmatic.
scared. We're scared.
I'll take it on.
Okay, go.
I'm crossing my arms and leaning back here.
Well, I know Jacob likes fantasy books, and although I haven't read a lot of fantasy, the latest books in the series I've read is the Kate Daniels series, which I'll get to a little later in more depth. But it's written by Iona Andrews, which is a husband and wife team. It's urban fantasy. I'm actually really curious to see what Jacob actually thinks of it, rather than putting it as a recommendation to something that I know he will like. But I think something that he would like would be Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card,
Hey,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is a
that's what I was gonna
sci-fi-
recommend to him.
Sci-fi,
Okay, fine. We're
Beat
gonna
you to it.
compare. We're gonna compare recommendations. Go.
which is a sci-fi book. And the way I would describe Ender's Game is it's very easy sci-fi to read because there's not a whole lot in the sci-fi space that you need to understand off the go. It's very much explained to you as the book unfolds. But the basic premise is that aliens have attacked the Earth twice, and now the hunt is on for the next leader for the human race to defend itself. And basically they are evaluating children, and one of them is named Ender. And about his selection process, and basically the book goes from there. And I don't really like to tell people more than that.
Can't
That
believe you
sounds
stole my recommendation.
awesome. Wow.
But that was a good recommendation.
Yeah, that was really good. Okay, before I judge, Ramya, you're recommending
Yeah.
the same one, so you
Yes,
good to go.
I am. Well, I'm not going to start from scratch the way
I feel like
Aamer
a
did.
judge.
He did. You feel so good. But yes, Ender's Game for you because of all the sci-fi elements that Aamer has already pointed out. The world building is done very quickly, and I think that you'll enjoy picking that apart to see if it's done well because you're such a fantasy head. Is that a thing? Yeah. Anyways, and the second part of it that I think you'd really enjoy is the writing. It goes into a lot of the psyche of the characters, the friendships, the relationships. You know, these are children who are put together in a space, some of them against their will, some of them who are really pretending like they belong there, and they're going through it mentally, the mental preparation of taking on all this pressure of fighting, of creating systems, of taking responsibility, like they're children. And there's that kind of like getting on each other's nerves aspect because people, you know, different positions of power and authority and such. And so you get a lot of that friction, which is, I think, written very well and presented very well by the author. So I enjoyed it, and I don't read any fantasy at all. Well, barely.
This felt more like an intervention than a recommendation. Sitting me down, Jacob, you need to read this book.
Yeah. Because now the pressure's on. It's like Aamer did a way better job than I did. Fine, I'll take the letter grade that takes this average down.
D plus.
I'm giving Aamer an A. Yeah, deep. Okay, that's brutal. Come on.
Yes.
I'm giving Aamer an A and Ramya a B.
Okay, B, you think
Rabia.
is generous.
Keep it short.
Okay.
I would like to comment on your intervention piece. I actually have sort of done that to a friend. We're actually gifted them a book, knowing that they would read it, and very confident they would enjoy it. But yeah, it was a friend in Florida, so I sent it all the way over there. And as you can imagine, the book is Undress Me in the Temple of Heaven by Susan Jane Gilman, whose
Say the
title
title again.
Undress Me in the Temple of Heaven. Those that can't see me, I'm beat red, but it is a book with a very
None of
funny
us can see,
title.
This is audio.
But the book is basically about two Ivy League students who decide that they want to travel the world. Neither has really been outside the United States by themselves. And this is occurring in the 1980s when China first lifted its ban on Western tourists. And the first stop they decide to make is Hong Kong. So it is a very adventurous story. It is nonfiction, so It is from her perspective, Susan Jane Gilman, and it's a fabulous book.
And that was
Wow.
intervention worthy.
That was intervention worthy. I sent it to a friend because the book is primarily about friendship, in my opinion, between these two girls. So I bought the book and sent it over.
All right. Jacob, you have one for Niz?
Yeah. One last recommendation for Nisreen this time. Niz, I think you would love the Good Girls Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. A super well-produced audiobook. It's a trilogy, very readable books, absolute page-turners, murder mystery for people who would love podcasts like Serial and any like true crime podcasts. It has this formula where it provides to you information. The character and yourself have to try and like break down that information, and then the main character goes out and gathers more information and then has a breakdown of that new information. So it constantly has this formula of gather information, analyze, and it's all you want to do is know more and have more time to analyze it. So it's really meant for you to solve
Love it.
a crime.
I love murder mysteries, and just the fact that it's challenging, I'm going to say an A. You sold it.
Yep. Although I didn't give you a single premise. You don't even know what it's
But I
about.
want to know more, and that's like the important part.
Yeah,
Right?
it's good that you
Okay.
stopped there. Were you going to continue?
You were giving
That's
more?
good enough? Okay. No.
That was
No.
it?
He was.
it. I-
But he knows.
No, I need
She's
more
already
now.
sold.
I'd love to recommend to Nasreen as well. I know Nasreen likes a good romance book, and I'm going to be bold and continue my theme of
You guys know me
strange
too
titles.
well
But
now.
Desire by Amanda Quick.
Desire by Amanda Quick. Ooh.
Yes. So the book takes place on the island of Desire, which is in a fictitious place in England back in the day of medieval times. And a woman has this island all to herself in terms of ruling it, and makes perfumes and all sorts of other things. And her father or male relative has just passed away. So she has two options, either to find a husband or that will come to the island, or go off the island and marry somebody and go somewhere else. And she does not want to leave. And at the same time, one of her neighbors wants all of her island. So she has to figure out how she's going to solve both problems.
It's quite the predicament.
Interesting.
And the second one I have for
What? I
you
have
is
two?
also a
I have
romance
two recommendations?
book
What, in case the first doesn't work out?
called
I think this is cheating.
The Midnight Warrior, which also takes place in a similar time frame and has a very strong female protagonist. And there's a smidget of magic in the book, so it's a touch of fantasy, but most of it is pretty plain vanilla, regular sort of plot lines. But the basic premise is that she is also somewhat of a healer, and people have come into her territory and ruled it, but they also need a healer. And she has to figure out how she is going to navigate being ruled by somebody but not giving up her secrets of healing and magic.
I liked both.
I liked both, but I like the first one better. I think you sold that one more for me. I'm gonna. What letter grade do you guys think that deserves?
The thing is, like, I'm not sold, so this is going to be a bias of just selling romance to me, which I'm just never sold. So I would give it a B minus.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, Rims. I'm not a big romance fan, so B minus. You know what? Actually, no, B. B because it was well articulated, but
It was well
it
articulated.
loses points for being romance.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I mean. It's not even about the. It's
You
not even
guys are
about the art of the
haters.
recommendation anymore. It's just like, romance, really.
And I think recommendations are interesting too, because the longer it's been since you've actually read the book, the harder it is to recommend. For me,
Yes.
The Midnight
Yeah,
Warrior
that's
is
a good
so
point.
far back, it was really hard for me to sort of dig up what I really enjoyed about the book. I mean, I really enjoyed the book in general, and there were definitely, the ending is fantastic, which I which I really enjoyed. But like, there's are specific points that I can point to and be like, oh yeah, this was really well done. Not that much.
All right, friends, we have so much more to get to, but the next thing I want to do is go through some recommendations from Sela. Rams, you're up.
Wow. Okay, sounds good. I will tell you about the 3 titles that are up on the CELA homepage. That is the Center for Equitable Library Access at celalibrary.ca. These are the 3 up titles that have been there for the last few weeks. So if you haven't checked them out yet, it is The Mystery Guest, Molly the Maid, number 2 by Nita Prose. Suspense and thrillers, another recommendation coming in for Nisreen. Oath and Honor by Liz Cheney, politics and government biography. And the last one is The Billimarais by Jen Arden, and that's a Gentle Mysteries titles. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back with that game. My gosh, I was like, what are we talking about?
Game?
Rapid game? It's kind of a game. Rapid fire review with Aamer Khan. He's insistent that we go through it. We'll be right back and say my audiobook review. Welcome back. It's AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. We are back with Aamer Khan, and we're going to get into rapid fire review because why, Aamer? You're having FOMO?
FOMO? I don't even know what that means.
Fear of missing out.
Oh my god. You were using a different language. I'm like, what are you talking about?
He's like, why am I the only one who hasn't done rapid fire review yet? Is there a problem? I was like, no, there's no technical problem. Okay, we can do it. Okay.
I always like a good challenge.
Yeah. So we can do a rapid fire review first, or we can go through book club question of the art of the recommendation. Jacob, should we make him wait a little longer?
Yeah, let's make him wait just a little longer
Okay.
because we're jerks. Here's what Debbie Williams has to say about this. I love when people recommend books to me. I definitely take them into consideration. What makes me decide to accept or decline the recommendation is whether I think I like the book. If I don't think I'd like the setting or the subject matter, then I'm most likely not going to read it. Pretty straightforward.
That one, along with the note that you gave about like stop spending so much time describing things in the book.
Yes. Yeah.
Sarah Hillis, she wrote as well. She's our Know Your Narrator contributor on the show. She said, I'm a bit of a snob about book recommendations, actually. It often takes me a long time after someone's recommended a book to actually decide to read it. It's like it has to be my own idea or something. But then there are times when so many people I trust recommend a book to me that I just figure I'm being prompted by life to read it. And in those cases, I'm rarely disappointed. I tend not to ask people to recommend books to me, so when they do of their own accord, I often stick them further down my list than the ones that I've decided to read for myself. I'm not saying that this is a good quality in myself at all. I think that what makes a good recommendation is some idea of the quality of the writing and a reason why the person might think that I would like it. It can't just be because they like it.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Prompted by life to read
Yeah, no,
it.
I'm that way. I'm that way. 100%.
In other words, succumb to peer pressure.
No, divine intervention. Unbelievable.
You're an optimistic person, clearly.
No, I just think that sometimes things come in at the right place at the right time, and who knows what you'll take away from it.
It's true. Sometimes it feels like once you start to hear about something, you hear it. You're far more likely to hear about it again.
There's a word for that.
Yeah, there's a name for that. I
Yeah.
forgot what it's called.
Sometimes books are very time specific too. I mean, something like Mad Honey is very much for our times right now, but
True.
I'm not sure 20 years from now it's
It will
going to
be
hold
relevant.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Daniel McLaughlin. Great question, Jacob. Oh, thank you. I think I need to know about the person who's making the recommendation. What are their interests, and what do they usually like reading?
Yeah, whether they like to read
I
at all.
agree with her.
mean, I've come across people who refuse to read longer books, and I'm like, okay, well,
Nope.
half my recommendations are done.
Hmm. And you have to trust their opinion, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's more, though. I like recommendations for like reading, but for serious books. I listen to serious folks. I often find I trust recommendations from people who I know really hate the same books and authors I hate. It can be really fun to talk about why a certain book is really bad.
Oh, can I insert
She
Nicholas
said-
Sparks over here?
She said it'd be fun to talk about why a certain book would be terribly awful with a sympathetic reader. That's hilarious. I just love the responses that Danielle gives because they're so
Is that what she said? Oh.
yeah. It's
So
so
she wants to have a fight, is
entertaining.
what she's saying.
Yeah, exactly. She loves debates, right?
Okay, that's
Shout out
awesome.
on
Yeah.
Know Your Rights with Danielle McLaughlin on Kelly and Ramya. But I'm just saying, like, she loves to have a good debate about something, and she'll do that with her books. She's like, let's hate together. All right, is it about time?
It's finally time, Aamer.
It's
You've waited long enough.
time. Rapid fire review is when we give you 15 seconds to review a title for us. We give you 5 titles. You got 15 seconds each. And then after, and these are titles that you've chosen to bring to the table. Aamer, you've chosen these books. And then after we get through all 5, we will break down 1, possibly 2 of these books. Ready?
Right.
Okay. The Kate Daniel series by Alona Andrews.
So this is urban fantasy, very easy to read, very, very entertaining. It will make you laugh, it will make you cry, and it will make you sigh, all in the best of ways.
Oh,
Oh, that was
that
good.
was lovely. Wow. Okay, just yeah.
Wow.
That's what 15 seconds feels like, Aamer.
Yeah, keep it short, done right. Holy
He's learned
smokes.
so much this episode.
Next, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins.
So this book is about the highs and lows of Hollywood. It's pretty much what you would expect from a biographical book about somebody who's lived a high life and is reflecting on it. It has several twists, turns, and it's a fantastic book if you're interested in Hollywood.
Okay, good. I loved that. I loved it. You know what? You write so much. I feel like you're just so good at this. Okay, the third one. My Oxford Year by Julia Whalen.
Oh my gosh. I think all I have to say is Julia Whalen narrated her own book and we're done. But the book is a romance that is serious undertones and is a book lover's book as well, if you like. But you don't have to read James Joyce's Ulysses to enjoy this book. It's
It's
very cleverly written. Is what I was gonna-
That's that's a good way to describe that. It's a
Yeah,
clever book
it
more
is
than anything,
clever.
especially in the way
Yeah.
it's like formatted.
Yep.
Next, The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich.
So this is historical fiction, I believe set in the 1950s, about a First Nations community that is fighting a bill in Congress that would basically kick them off their land and leave them destitute. Because it's based on a real story, it's absolutely fantastically written and a Pulitzer Prize winner.
okay.
Very politically relevant too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be interested in this.
Yep.
That was really good.
A rapid fire review recommendation. Nice. All right.
One last book.
One last book. Zorro by Isabel Allende.
She is a phenomenal author. She writes extremely well, and this is an adventure story told of Zorro in our times with our sort of lens. I was thoroughly impressed with how that was done, and it is an absolute adventure of romance and what you'd expect from Zorro.
Okay. Which one do you want to expand on? My Oxford Year? No, I'm kidding.
No, you're not allowed.
Yeah.
Pick another.
Sorry.
I'll choose number 1, Kate Daniels series. And I did want to mention this earlier too with regards to the recommendation pieces. Novellas are a great way to recommend books if you've never done it before.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can really give sort of the essence of what the author is like, and that doesn't, that's the same for the Kate Daniels series. Most of her books are actually short. I like to joke that Sela knows that you'll like the book so well that they're actually bundled books 1 through 4 and 5 through 8 together.
Oh.
So, for those like myself who are like, oh, that was really good, and I really don't want to go through going and downloading the second one, you can download the first 4 all at once. And honestly, I didn't even notice where one ended and the other began. They're written so well and with so much entertainment. The plot really moves. They're really easy to read. It's really light urban fantasy in terms of, again, you don't need a whole lot of information to get into the fantasy bit. It's a lot of sort of everyday monsters and stuff that are described. The premise is also sort of slightly scientific, and I use that term extremely loosely, that it's basically set in our time, but the background is that basically magic and technology are 2 forces that balance the world. And as we are in now, tech is sort of strong. But what has happened is a catastrophic event has happened where a magic wave basically decimated a lot of the earth. So we're living in an age where mostly technology reigns, but every now and then, with total unprediction, magic will come. And when this magic comes, all the technology dies and only magic reigns.
Oh, that sounds really cool. This is such a specific thing I love in fantasy is when the magic is treated like science, and like wizards are basically scientists, and they treat magic as if it was like the forces of nature that we have here in the real world, like gravity and
Exactly, and there's a
and
sense
physics
of,
and stuff like that. It's just all of one. It's just all one thing.
and there's a sense of unknown to the whole thing too, right? Because you don't know what this magic
Right.
will bring, and nobody in the book knows either. So they're always sort of searching for answers in that regard. Our hero for the book, Kate Daniels, is somebody who has a backstory too in terms of family, and there's also along with that too, which the authors do very well. It's actually a husband and wife team that. Uh, ooh,
There's also what that they do really well.
they also do relationships really well for the protagonist who is Kate Daniels, and it is written by a husband and wife team, which I find truly amazing.
Oh.
The series holds 10 books in its center, but the fan base is so large and so demanding that she's actually written books in between the 10. And usually some of these are pretty rough in terms of how they fit in with other series that I've read. You know, it's nice to read them, but they're not quite as good as the originals. But in Kate Daniels, case, they're really well done. They fit almost perfectly with in between the books. They're really well done. It's not, I don't feel cheated where this is sort of like a watered down version or something like that. Yeah, it's just amazing the level they're able to keep up with the 10 books. I should mention that Ilona Andrews has other series too. I can't even recall how many books they have on Sela, but it is not a small number.
I know that you, Aamer, really enjoy like the research around who wrote, how they wrote, why they wrote, that kind of thing, and it's really interesting to hear about like these dual narrations, or not narrations, dual authoring also. And I think that, is it fair to say that you're as interested in that side of it, like the background, as much as the actual writing in the book?
No, I not so much actually. I think if I really enjoy the book, that's when I sort of pick up the research and see, okay, well, let's see what's
Definitely
interesting.
post, yeah.
Yeah, let's see what's interesting about this. And in the case of Ilona Andrews, she was actually born in Russia, and the husband was a communications officer in the army, and they both live in Texas. So it's it's sort of little tidbits that I'm like, oh, that, and I try to think about the way they write, and I just can't match that up at all. But and, I've seen interviews with them too, and it's really clear they have a great time writing.
Do you know how they split up the work?
No, but people have posed some questions about, what do you do when you can't come to an agreement on something, and they say, we talk it out and see what's the most logical for the characters. So I think they're very personal to them, the characters in general, in terms of who they are, what they are, and how they would act. To the point where I think a lot of readers enjoy the books just because of the way the characters are done.
That's such an interesting dynamic. That feels like a lot less lonely of an existence than your typical lonely author writing in their basement.
All right, guys. I think this brings the episode to a close. We've done everything on our checklist.
For reference, that was the Kate Daniels series by
Yes.
Ilona Andrews. Just in case you were interested in the series that Aamer was just talking about. Next week, we're going to be talking to someone super interesting. So a couple weeks ago, Julia Whalen, author of My Oxford Year and Thank You for Listening, was on here talking about, those two books and her extensive work as an audiobook narrator. And she often talked about the importance of the producers working alongside her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what kind of guest we're having next week. It's Caleb Stoll, who is a producer, an audiobook producer at Penguin Random House Canada. So we're going to ask him all the questions that I've been gathering up for like months. Like, I want to know what that collaboration looks like, and I have a feeling it's different for every author, and I can't wait to ask these questions. What about you, Rams?
Looking forward to it. That's up next week. Also, keep in touch with us, okay? Send us your feedback
Please.
at ami.ca. Also, you can call us 1-866-509-4545 and keep in touch with us that way. Aamer Khan is our contributor who joins us monthly, our audiobook curator. So thanks for coming on. Jacob, Ramya, Nasreen, we're out for this week, and we'll catch you back next time. Until then, happy audiobook listening.